Welcome, everyone, to Alaska Quarterly Review's Reading and Conversation series, available on the YouTube channel of Alaska Quarterly Review. Please feel free to watch any of our prior programs and to share them. Alaska Quarterly Review is committed to presenting these programs without charge and to showcase vibrant and diverse new and emerging voices and literary conversations with depth, complexity, and humanity. I am Ronald Spatz, Editor-in-Chief of Alaska Quarterly Review, and before we begin, I'd like to make a few important acknowledgments. Alaska Quarterly Review acknowledges the Anchorage Museum for hosting and providing technical support for this event, and the Center for the Narrative and Lyric Arts, Alaska Quarterly Review's 501c3 umbrella organization, which makes this event possible. I also want to make a land acknowledgement. Alaska Quarterly Review recognizes the indigenous land on which all Alaskans live. Alaska Quarterly Review is located in Anchorage, and Anchorage is Donika homeland. Donika is the language spoken by the traditional, present, and future caretakers of this land, and land acknowledgement opens a space with gratefulness and respect for the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspective of indigenous peoples and marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. Today, we are featuring a reading from Sofar, the newly released poetry collection by Elizabeth Bradfield, published by Persea Books. In Sofar, poet-naturalist Elizabeth Bradfield turns her gaze toward our ecological and historical moment, her decade-long queer love and lifetime spent working on boats and the shifting tides of her own body and life, all with raw yearning and linguistic precision. The title refers to the sound frequency and ranging channel, a deep oceanic layer that allows sound to travel immense distances. That metaphor becomes a guiding principle in Bradfield's poetics as she listens across vast expanses between memory and history, strangers and beloveds, and the more than human world. These are poems of place and of the heart, as Donika Kelly so powerfully observes. Sofar, she said, is a sounding, both a call and measurement, a history of love, longing, and life lived aboard boats alongside whales, sharks, seals, coyotes. They ring with such tenderness, such longing, they raise in this reader an echoing ache. That ache reverberates through the collection, which blends observation with intimacy, solitude with connection, and ecological witnessing with personal reckoning. Bradfield's work as a naturalist gives the poems an earned authority and immediacy. As Stephanie Burt writes in American Poet, Bradfield is not merely drawing on nature for metaphor. Rather, plants and animals give most of her poems their reason to exist. Whales, huskiels, storm petrels, they are not symbols, but companions and co-anchors in a world under pressure, worthy of grief, awe, and attention. In addition to Sofar, Elizabeth Bradfield is the author of Toward Antarctica, Once Removed, Approaching Ice, interpretive work, winner of the Audre Lorde Prize, and Theorem, a collaboration with artist Antonia Contreau. She co-edited and founded Broadsided Press, 15 years of poetic artistic collaboration, 2005 to 2020, and Cascadia Field Guide, Art, Ecology, and Poetry, which was winner of a Pacific Northwest Book Award. Founder and editor and chief of Broadsided, as I just said, she teaches creative writing at Brandeis University and balances her literary life with work as a naturalist and field assistant, both locally and abroad. It is my honor to introduce to you and welcome Elizabeth Bradfield.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you so much for inviting me to read in this series. And, when I first moved to Anchorage to join the the then residency MFA program at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. Ron knows this story, but it's worth sharing. I had gotten an acceptance for a poem of mine in AQR right before I packed the van and drove from Cape Cod to Anchorage, and so AQR had been on my horizon as a dreamed of journal and one that I really respected, and then to meet Ron and get to help in reading and commenting on AQR and to continue to this day as a contributing editor there is really an honor. So I'm really appreciative, and I'm really happy to read from this new book of poems. I think Ron described it well enough, so I might just dive right into some of that sound stuff. And there are some poems in here that were first published in AQR. Um, so let's start and see what happens. I guess I should point to the cover of this book, which uh, which features a photograph manipulated in color of a figure standing in the waves holding an oar that's totally drilled through. The oar itself is a sculpture by my neighbor and studio mate and co-conspirator Janice Redman, and I'm really honored to have her work on the cover of this book. And depending on time, I might read a poem about that too. The opening poem of the book, there's a poem that threads through the book in little incremental bits, but the first full poem of the book is a poem titled Considering the Haddle Zone. And it's a sectioned poem, and I don't think I need to define anything beforehand because I think the poem does, hopefully, most of that work. Considering the Haddle Zone. 1. Cusk eels in the harbor ratchet for love all August. We hear them buzz at night. Desire sounded as thumb up washboard, pulsed from where we anchor. The deepest ocean trenches are named for Hades, god of the underworld, who waits for love to fall to him. In that dark, isopods feed on what drifts down from sunlit water. Tissue, eelgrass, shipwood, Fukushima's radionuclides. 2. The seafloor is mapped by satellites that ping the ocean surface and factor out the waves that pass across it, leaving swells and dimples pushed or pulled by peaks and trenches deep below, proof that what's hidden can still be sensed. 3. There's a quartzite block a half-fathom high and larger than a king-size bed to the east of Provincetown's town hall. Its surface ripples with small waves stilled forever, memorial to the disease that flooded this town in the 80s, stormed those who held and cared for all who fell to them from places that would not hold care. I like to imagine, inside the block, delicate, sensitive forms drifting and brushing each other like cilia, sargassum, or tentacles. 4. As a kid, my dream was to live on the seafloor in a domed house of glass. It's your story. Last summer, on the Labrador ferry coming in to Natuashish, we passed the ship that weeks before had launched the sub that sank to visit the Titanic and never came back. On the ferry deck, a buzz everywhere at once and hard to locate, like sound underwater to human ears. There are kids on deck. I quit for sure. Is that the crew in lawn chairs? Is that really? They must be. So where are they going? Can you imagine? I hear the family. How long do you think they waited? 5. I wear both our wedding rings and your father's, too, on my right ring finger. They click quietly. Some cusk eels thrive in the Haddle Zone's dark crush. The articles don't say if they make any sound. And it's true, there's a lot of poems in this book that are about sound, about listening across distances, and this idea of the Sofar channel, of this layer of water at a certain depth, pressure, temperature that acts like fiber optic cables for sound is really fascinating to me, ecologically and metaphorically too. And I've been thinking a lot about the lifetime I've spent on boats. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, on the water, and was very lucky that we had, a little dinghy to row around and a little runabout. And then I went to work on boats in college as a deckhand and right after college as a deckhand, and eventually started working as a marine naturalist. And the parts of boats, the terminology of boats, the way they persist over time is really interesting to me. Um, so there's a series of poems in Sofar that take the specific nautical terms, boat terms, and the first of those is list, which is, here's the definition, from Old Norse, border selvage, earlier spelled lust. To list is to edge toward tipping, which sailors know one way and the Urban Dictionary another. I found you alongside my desire for another, at the edge of what felt right. And now, here we are, almost 30 years on, leaning from so much, holding our edges. I remember visiting the fabric store with my mother, the bright slide of scissors, clean rip of measured cloth, and the magic of selvage, a tidy, stippled border we knew wouldn't fray, an advantage in what we wanted to stitch together. List, lust, lean, and listen, please. I have this plan and I'm going to change my plan. I want to read another one of the boat term poems or boat adjacent terms. This poem is titled Sheath. Sheath. Cover for the blade I'd earn my trust. Excuse me, let me start over. Sheath. Cover for the blade I'd earn my place by and trust to fix and free what needs it. Dress I slip my body in and out of, and what the coyote's penis slips from too. This morning, in February's raw, bright chop, two on the beach, heads down, sniffing something that doesn't really matter. What matters is what they smell in each other. His chin set on the dip of her spine, her tail lifted to one side. After, calm. Broad daylight on a beach that, come summer, will be bright with towels and bodies rank with sunscreen. Now this harbor is empty, flecked with seasonal moorings. Only us now. Only those of us lucky enough to have seen what winter tries to tell us about the necessary dangers and possibilities of being exposed. I should say a lot of these poems are set where I live now, on Cape Cod. I moved here first in the late 1990s and left for 5 years to live in Anchorage and then came back. And it's been a place that's been really important to me. And one of the really amazing and dramatic things that has happened over the time that I've lived here has been the recovery of gray seals in this ecosystem and the recovery of white sharks, great whites, in this ecosystem. Um, it's been discomforting to a lot of people. It's been really fascinating to watch. And both species have recovered because of protection. We stopped harming them as humans. And of course, their recovery um, is a dynamic between the two of them as well. So this is a poem titled Shadow, Carcharodon carcharias, which is the Latin name for great white shark. And it starts with an epigraph. The top predators of the oceans, great white sharks and some of their kin, have an extra sense to help them find and track prey, the ability to detect the tiny electrical fields that are generated by all living organisms. They're so sensitive that they can even detect a beating heart. And this is from Damon Bedingfield, Ampullae of Lorenzini. Here's the poem. For you, shadow, the skin-holding sea flickers, surges with light, scent, the pulsed charges of bird heart, cod heart, seal heart. I have envied and feared those for whom the spirit veil is thin, who sense what to me is wind, but for them is presence beyond birds. Your eye, I learn, shadow, is able to see in both darkness and day, is not black but indigo, a dye that harmed many more in its enslaved making than your hungers ever have. Only twice have I been certain some spirit hovered near me. Once, the night I was married, on a sleeping porch beside the bay where I still swim. You hover in the trough at slack tide, in the shadow between sandbars, listening, listening, with your other senses, your body a tuning fork thrummed by other bodies. We woke in the night in that borrowed house, on the bed in the winterized porch, something unhappy on the other side of the wall, something. The quiet of you, how the one time I saw you from the cliff's ragged field site, you emerged more than rose into sight, shadow, becoming presence. A sound, a chair scraped, thrum of ire. I held my love and, instinctive, hardened into a shield. Every part of me, no. And it faded. We could not return to dream. I've seen what you've missed more than witnessed the taking. Punched curve at the hip of a seal, fresh pink-white or furred-over scar. I've seen you slide up a dead whale's flank. The friend whose house it was, unsurprised, told us her mother had died there, her last years full of confused pain. What did her spirit speak or seek? I read that your body, unlike the bodies of whales, of turtles, of tuna, lucky shadow, is not hurt by the poisons, PCBs, mercury we've sloughed into your ocean. I felt myself shift into pity then. Fear and fury ebbed. With the senses I have, I can't sense much of the worlds I live alongside, signaling over me. Shadow, the tags that sound out your passage are nothing but moments of presence, nothing of what pulls you or what changes the skin you can shade at will. Shadow, I don't seek or fear you, but I know you're there, under the bay's bright scrim. Your senses vaster and older than anything this body or the gray folds of my human mind, fired by strange sparks, can know. Guess I'll read next a poem that first appeared in AQR. And I think in these times of siloing and divides and difficulties communicating with people who have different viewpoints of emotional and physical violence between differences, I think a lot about some of the relationships I have that reach across those divides. Um, Not untroubled, but valuable to me. Oh, I'm on the wrong page. Hold on. This poem's titled Allegiance. Allegiance. Each morning, before light, in season, Billy's F-150 fires up, grumbles in his drive, heads for the pier. I hear it through the small window above my bed, and when I'm out, I watch for him. Billy at the race, Billy off the peaked hill, Billy steaming home around the point. Billy. Thick glasses, accent, hands, wizard of fiberglass and steam box, torch and epoxy, whose loft holds all the tools, any clamp or nail you'd need, any saw or grinder, who coaches us as we fix our skiff in his garage and doesn't laugh in a mean way when we fuck up. How's my favorite whale hugger? Calls Billy as I drive my Prius past his house. We call him the boat fairy to his face. He and his wife call us the girls. We avoid politics beyond weather and fish, which we get into a big time. Elbows out windows, idling. We want to make him a t-shirt, a badge, a sticker for his truck. We tell him so. Listen, we all know there are silences between us. It's okay to not speak them here. I was very lucky um, that Peggy Shoemaker, amazing Alaska poet, memoirist, literary citizen, um, selected this next poem for inclusion in the issue of Plowshares that she edited last year. So this poem is titled "At the Smallpox Cemetery, Provincetown." And for those of you who don't know, Provincetown is a small town at the very tip of Cape Cod. It's the kind of the origin of colonialism um, in the United States of America. It's where the Mayflower first dropped hook. It's where the Mayflower Compact was signed. Um, it has a long storied history as a whaling port and a port where Azorean and Cape Verdean people came for the fishing and the whaling. It's now an art colony, a tourist town, still a working fishing town. And there are beautiful trees here, American beech. And unfortunately, American beech are being hit quite hard by um, beech disease. And this poem is about that, about smallpox, and also pulls a lot of lines from C.D. Wright, the poet C.D. Wright, her obsessive book on beech trees titled Casting Deep Shade. Okay, sorry, that was a long explanation. At the Smallpox Cemetery, Provincetown, after C.D. Wright's Casting Deep Shade. Beech is Anglo-Saxon bok, book, document, or charter, C.D. writes. The shoots grow faster in the dark, she writes in her 250-some page chronicle of obsession. Here, now, at the Smallpox Cemetery, near where I live, the shin-high marble grave markers, corners softened, stand canted like awkward lumber. Bone-white, chiseled only number 1, 2, 14. They are shaded under this grove of not yet dying American beech. Dogs bark in the distance. In the 1800s, the fevered were brought to this pest house, to bunks far from town, by men who needed the extra scratch bad. They'd not have heard dogs. All pets were killed by town decree. One of the graves holds Anton Domingo, 22, who stepped off a ship from the Azores, already a widower. Some local, desperate for cash, would have buried him and Mary Rogers, who came from Boston by steamer, then died in just 6 days. There is still canopy over the road that leads here, but many leaves are striped dark, have clawed into themselves, a sure sign the tree will soon be dead. No treatment for this outbreak, which is natural, which doesn't mean it isn't awful. Can you imagine this world without beech trees? Also dead in 1872, George Hallett, Frank Sofrine, Manuel Terciera, Tesman Manuel, whose husband gave it to her, then listed her as heart attack so she could be buried proper in another, less lonely place. Use beech branch as a wand to open channels for communication with spirits, she writes. She writes, caterpillars that eat beech leaves include the ghost moth. The doctor paid to tend the sick could not return to visit home. Another doctor, to prove it safe, shot vaccine into his 5-year-old. A few of the markers are broken or gone. All winter, the leaves, marcescent, shiver in the slightest wind, pale tan and thin as onion skin. They preserve the shape of summer's light-eating tree that, with luck, will hunger for summers to come. Mask in pocket, hands in pockets, I stand by inkberry and bullbriar above the small hole that marks the pestilence house's cellar. Above, beautiful, green, another morning. Okay, so I'll read just a couple more poems. This next one was also first published in Alaska Quarterly Review, and it's titled uh, The California Coast. Offshore, the sea lions wouldn't stop barking. I didn't want them to. Not ever. Through the thin tent walls, sea lions. Over surf, under pines, along the high chittering of oyster catchers. Inland, fires were burning. We didn't live here, so didn't know how wrong the noon sky, the sunset, the gorgeous flushed dawn. We loved it. We wanted to move here. Back home, the bay froze. Sea turtles were stopped mid-paddle. But we were off the grid, nearly barefoot, basking. We shat in a hole. We tossed our rinse water out the trailer's door. It was truly paradise at the Pink Camper until I suggested we go walk in the redwoods. Off the coast, off the conservation land, we found etched into dirt and cobbled riverbed what's found everywhere. Rage, a doorless white truck forever stalled, rusting, and left. Bucket. On one oxbow shore, blue panties with lace trim, straw-brimmed hat on a stump, dusty sweatshirt, a story we didn't want to imagine. Boredom and the violence of being bored. Back home, it's told differently, sculpted with other debris, hidden under other veneers. But America, it's everywhere. And I want to end. Okay, I have two poems I want to finish with, and one where I first met um, the northern shoveler was living in Alaska, and we get them here occasionally, rarely, but they are just my favorite birds. I mean, that bill, what what a bird, and they're so beautiful. Um, so this is a poem about northern shovelers, although it's titled Kiss Me Like a Limpkin, which is another bird. Kiss me like a limpkin, we joked, after seeing one go at a snail. Kiss me like a limpkin, meaning really get in there and go for the meat. Or like an avocet, chin swept across my shoulders' skin, bill slightly parted. Don't kiss me like a heron, quick, hard stab and retreat. Or like a turkey, random pecks. I'd take it like a sanderling, though, stippling the shoreline of my thigh. And yes, yes, like a shoveler, your wide, particular mouth-bill, tight as a coin purse until you seek to satisfy your hunger, and then, agape, seeking together, a swirl, we help each other get what we want, circling to spin up what will gratify. Kiss me like a shoveler in an ecstasy of shovelers, all of us one big pinwheel now, a rave, water rippling out from our twirl, from the serious business of our mouths, free of any self-consciousness, focused on satisfaction, light gleaming on the lustrous black-green or soft chinchilla of the backs of our bent and intent heads. Now I can't decide what I want to end with. But since I mentioned the cover of the book, I suppose I should read that poem. Um, and it's titled Memory Rowing the Passage of Time. And it's after the sculpture that the figure on the front of the book is holding. You know, that oar drilled with lots of holes. Memory Rowing the Passage of Time is what I'd title this sculpture, if asked. And this is what my new mind, which is an older mind, feels like. An oar with the blade so thoroughly drilled, it's more whole than wood. I'm reading about different cultures of time. Linear, the past behind you. Visible, future at your back. Vertical, time falling, your body an hourglass. Coiled, loops touching again and again. Janice has covered the oar in something like moleskin, which was never the skin of a tiny, shy mammal, but heavy cotton rough to softness. I like hacks for anticipated wear. One spring, I sewed leather cuffs onto our skiff's oars, pushed waxed twine through punches with a sail palm, which made me ridiculously enamored of myself, sitting in the sunlit drive, thinking, if only someone would come by and see this, they'd have to fall in love with me. Janice's oar hangs vertical, braced by a special-made mount. If it dropped, it would break, but my heart's not in my throat. One version of time is a circle, Ouroboros, the world's waters held inside, everything inside, held. Each day, there are little moments I can't reach back and touch, which makes it easier to pull the oar, which makes it harder to get anywhere. So thank you. Thank you, Ron and AQR, for inviting me to read. Um, and thank you, Persea, for publishing Sofar. And thank you, Alaska, for having given me so many beautiful experiences on the waters and shores and with friends and peers and writers that I admire. Thanks so much for having me.